So I'm out here watering my garden first thing in the morning, and a couple ideas came to me. First off, I really want to do a whole series, just to help the younger generation out. Because I know everything seems like it's really tough, but I think every generation's had it tough. You just got to figure out how to work through it, and I talk about working through the cracks. So when you first start out, you may not want to buy a home. And so there's some simple things you can do. Like I talked about in a previous video that, once I had settled down at 24, I had purchased a home with actually had a rental property tied to it. So there was a mother-in-law apartment. But before that, I was renting. And we've noticed now a lot of my rental properties, I have some fairly large homes that I bought where I call it like land banking, where it was like a 3,100 square foot house. And it was on a bad lot, and the thing was way underpriced because it needed a lot of work. And so we picked this thing up for a song. So 3,100 square feet for, I think it was $140,000. And it was plain Jane inside. And so we went ahead and we did some wainscot on the walls. We painted everything. We tiled the bathrooms and really just spruced it up. It did need a roof also, but all this stuff, we probably put no more than $20,000 into it. And we rented it for couple years, no problem. But then we noticed that there were a lot of millennials that actually were coming together. And since this was 3,100 square feet, the most recent house we rented was 3 millennials, and they split up the house where they each had their own section, and they just shared the kitchen, and it's working out great. And one of my other rental properties, same thing. It's a very large home, splitting it up. It's a little more riskier for the owner, I think, because, if somebody skips out on the rent or leaves the group, then it's going to be a problem. But I think that is something that you can do. And by the way, I think, they're paying maybe $500 a month and then splitting the utilities. That's hard to beat. So things like that, if you can get together with friends, and if there's, if you can trust them, you might be able to get away with saving some money. Now, you shouldn't think of renting a home to save money just to be able to spend it. You ought to be thinking about, I would argue you need to be saving a minimum of 25% of your pay. So if you're saving significant money to be able to do this, you need to be putting it aside. So it's almost like you need to think about, after taxes, the money you got coming in, maybe 1 week a month, needs to be set aside. And what's going to happen is that's going to allow you to now, get a significant down payment for a house. And I'm going to give you a couple ideas, because buying houses, in some areas, you're going to be at the back of the line if you're going to do one of these very low down. I don't even know what they have these days, 3% down or less. That's not going to put you at the front of the line if a home seller is looking at, several different people. What you want to do is move up towards closer to the investor class, where you put 20% down. And when you move into rental properties, that's exactly the way you do it, because the only people that can beat you is cash. And a lot of cash guys are going to be lowballing anyways. And so what you want to do is at least get to the investor class where you're putting 20% down. And I would argue today, I would not be buying real estate unless I found an extremely distressed property that, just like this other one, I would consider it distressed because it's valued probably $250,000, and I've only got maybe $160,000 in it. So that's the way you can really kind of get ahead. Remember in my previous video, I talked about rarely pay retail. You need to always figure out how to get things discounted. Oh, I'm being kicked out of place. There we go. You need to figure out how to get things discounted, because everybody wants your money. So the idea is to get the best deal as possible. Throughout my life, I've always tried to buy what I call scratch and dent or distressed, because, in many cases like these houses, you can pick them up for half price. I recently, say 2 years ago, I purchased a 1970s house. It was one of those split level Brady Bunch type house that was like 2,400 square feet, $80,000 cash. I used my IRA to purchase it. And it was butt ugly inside. It had a lot of what I call cosmetic damage, where people had dogs, and it's reeked to high heaven, and nobody would even consider buying it. But as an investor, if you look at thinking about buying distress and a little sweat equity, we went in and cleaned the place up. I had to replace a few windows. We put a new roof on, new appliances, and I've rented it for 2 years. Probably have cleared $34,000. And now we're putting it on the market, and it's I'm guessing close to $250,000, and I think I might have had $130,000 into it. So if you're going to buy a house, now I told you before, I wouldn't buy real estate right now unless you can get it distressed. But if you're going to live there for 30 years, it really doesn't matter. There is a business cycle, so let's talk about that for a minute. I mentioned before, everything's a cycle. What's happened before has happened before. So I'm aware of like a 400-year cycle that's like a grand solar minimum. But there's also a 100-year cycle, which is like reserve currency status. There's been multiple countries that have had the world reserve currency status starting in 1450. I think it was Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, Britain, United States. I think I might be missing one or two, but about every 100 years the baton is handed off to another country. And when that happens, whoever was reserve currency status, they kind of get hurt pretty bad when it changes hands. So we became world currency status in the USA in 1920. So the 2020, our 100 years is up, and you can see that our currency has got cracks in it. It's we're going to have trouble. But there's also a 40-year pattern, and that has to do with just fiat currencies. They typically don't last 40 years. And we're seeing that, we went fiat back in 1971, and what is that? That's like 47, 48 years now. Same problem. So we've got a couple things lining up against us that's going to be an issue. And then there's a 10-year financial cycle. You'll see, where you'll have the market crash down, they loosen up credit, they try to get it all going again, then they start tightening the credit, and it kind of starts all over, boom bust cycle. That's just the way everything's managed. So once you're aware of that, so the last crash was 2007, 2008. Well, we're at 2019, so 10-year cycle. Businesses, that have over leveraged, they end up getting, bankruptcy, or they get gobbled up by another company, and you have consolidation where there's layoffs, and the whole cycle starts again. Real estate will come down again. It always does. So if you can wait a few years, you might be able to pick things up much better. But like I said, if you're buying for the long haul, you're going to be okay. But so many people, they try to almost do their homes like day trading. They'll buy it for a couple years and then, trade it out to go get another house and then do it again a couple years later. I don't have enough energy for that. I'd rather, buy and live there for 25 years or more. Besides, your taxes will be better off that way. All right, so anyways, I wanted to give you a few of those ideas. Trying to keep these about 10 minutes for you. I want you to just constantly think about cycles and figure out where we're at in the cycle. And if you go look at, hold on a second, anyways, I was going to tell you about a particular chart anybody can look up, and I can't think of the name of it right now, but it shows the growth of real estate versus historical. So it's like a percent change chart, and it shows that we're way above historical norms. Real estate traditionally grows about 3% a year, and when you see this thing coming way off the line, that's a danger. Will Robinson, shouldn't be buying, but like I said, long-term tangible assets are the way to go, especially as I talk about, reserve currency status and fiat currencies breaking down. tangible assets will not go to zero. So that's what I recommend. Now, because of the 10-year financial cycle, this is where stocks become a little iffy to be playing around in. So this is the time, they call it, there's seasons to the stock market, winter, spring, summer, and fall. We've actually gone through fall. We're heading into winter. You'll start seeing a lot of mergers, acquisitions, bankruptcies. They've been in the news. You'll see a lot of these unicorn companies just go under. These companies that have been never made money, and they're super leveraged, and not sure why people are even investing in them, but they do. They got valuations in the billions. You'll see them disappear. So tangible assets, I decided back in about 2012, because our currency should have reset back in 2007, 2008. Instead, they put in life support, as I've talked about before. So now tangible assets are the only place I'll put my money. There might be some inverse ETFs or something I'll do, but I'm not big in derivatives right now. So ETFs are derivatives, and I don't trust them either. So a small percentage I have out there to play in those areas. But anyways, I just wanted to put that information out for you. You've got to figure it out yourself. There's lots of resources. I still argue Millionaire Next Door and Rich Dad Poor Dad are some of the best books out there that are in everyday language anybody can understand, and it's good for any age. All right, so let's remember, do the best you can. I hope everybody's treating you well. I hope you're doing well, and God bless.